Thanks for tuning in live, Proline TV, the Arlads Football Network, as we talk some AFC East football. The New York Jets. That's right. We're going to enter into the AFC East for the first time and not for the last time, as we have more NFL season preview interviews to do. And when we talk about the Jets, Matt O'Leary from the Matt O'Leary YouTube channel joins us. How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. We finally made it to training camp. Football's back.
Absolutely. And a new training camp for the New York Jets. And so far, everything that we're seeing, everything that we're hearing is positive. And who would have thought that toughening these guys up at training camp would be a positive, and the players are all for it?
Yeah, I love to see it. Pads went on Monday. They were doing live tackling drills, and the entire beat report was saying that we haven't seen a physical practice like this in years. I love it. I think it's exactly what this team needed, especially after, what they went through the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Did you get a chance to check out Zach Rosenblatt's column? Was it yesterday, I think, or today on about the Jets players and their and some of their comments regarding the coaching staff, the former coaching staff?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those comments. Some not so subtle digs, it seems like, going the way to the Saleh staff, especially compared to Aaron Glenn and how different things are. Where it's like accountability getting tossed around a lot. It's good now, but it's also kind of scary just to think back what was not so long ago.
Yeah. Just the penalties are just ridiculous. Most penalized team in the NFL the last couple of years. And we know it. We lived it. And I just remember all season last season talking about how just there's talent here. They just need coaching. They just don't have the coaching. And look, Saleh's a good defense coordinator. We all know that. He went in over his head the first trip as a head coach, and he'll get another opportunity, and hopefully he'll be better for it. But yeah, not just Saleh. All the way down the line, it just was not good. And just that's what excites me about the team this season, is that they're getting coaching. And so I know I've been around this game long enough to know that that's how you can really transform a team really quickly in the NFL. If you have talent and you can stay healthy, is with really good coaching.
Yeah, coaching really makes a big difference. And, a lot of people fall into the trap of, oh, these guys are professionals. They know how to play the game at this point when they're at that level. But to me, it's really a night and day difference when you look at a team in the NFL that is well coached. And sometimes you look at the roster and you wonder, how does that team get to 10 wins? Or how does that team get to a playoff spot? And then you look at another team and it seems like they have significantly more talent, and then they finish 5-12, 6-11,
Sure.
whatever, and it's all, like you said, it falls on coaching and the little things like undisciplined play, penalties, turnovers, special teams. It's not as fun or sexy to talk about all the offensive touchdowns and quarterback stats, but in crunch time those things really matter, and a lot of times on Sundays the difference between a win or a loss.
By the way, I hear some thunder in the distance, and I have to preface, I got to say this every time I do a show now that I'm out in this area here. I'm in the mountains out in North Carolina. I can have one of those like little lightning strikes where it just turns the electric off for like a fraction of a second, and then I'm gone. I'm gone for 10 minutes. So if I'm gone for 10 minutes, I'll be back. Okay. But I don't expect you to hold on, but hopefully that won't happen. Okay, anyway, let's get into this. So let's first of all talk about injuries, because again, injuries is something that has killed this team over the last few years. And from what I hear so far, mostly everybody is healthy, and you can knock on wood, whatever you want to do. I know Coach Saleh knocked on wood a lot and it didn't help him any. But yeah, is that the case?
Yeah, I would say so. Really, the only thing was the injury scare with Justin Fields on the second day of training camp. And, it was reported non-contact. He stood up, he sat down, he got on a cart and rode in. Hard not to have, a little PTSD, thinking the worst there.
We all did.
Yeah, with the Jets quarterback getting carted off on a non-contact injury. But thankfully, only a dislocated toe. He was, back to full participant only, a handful of days later. But other than that, yeah, they're in a pretty good spot right now, injury wise, and a nice change that hopefully continues throughout the rest of the summer for this team.
Yeah, the other thing I thought was real interesting is we got our first crack at hearing coach comment from an injury. And I mean, he knew what was the deal, yet he basically just said along the lines of, yeah, this isn't long term. He'll be back before week 1. And it's like, he's gonna be back in a couple of days. You know what I'm saying? So it's good though, because that's one thing that I've heard is that they are tight-lipped over there with this new coaching staff, which again was a problem with the old regime. So nothing's going to get out. And you know that from an Aaron Glenn coach team based on the Bill Parcells principles. There is no way that you were going to hear anything spilled out to the media in New York regarding stuff going on with the Jets, because if you do, then he's going to find out and that person will be gone.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too, right? We talked about welcome changes for, being a little bit more physical, no leaks, and kind of just handling business. None of these crazy outlandish stories. It's been a quiet off season. I'm totally down for just a completely normal, regular NFL season coming ahead with no crazy off the field storylines.
I hope so. We are all rooting for that. Okay. You were at training camp just a few days ago. You're going to go back for Giant Jet practices, which is going to be really fun. When is that? When do they?
August 12th. So a couple weeks.
So, and is that like a back and forth immediate deal, like Jets one day, Giants next, or are they splitting it up over multiple days or something like that?
The day on August 12th is at Jets camp. I don't know if they're off the top of my head, if they're doing something the next day at Giants camp or not.
But that's where you'll be when they're at Jets camp. Okay. So, regarding training camp, any of the viewers out there that are watching, what would you recommend they do regarding interesting training camp position battles? What should they zero in on if they want to take a look at a particular position that may not be sewed up right now?
Yeah, I think for me, things that I've been looking at, the safety spot, like we know Andre Sisco is going to be one of the starters, but across from him is still kind of up in the air. And you have guys like Tony Adams and rookie Malachi Moore and Isaiah Oliver battling things out for that final spot. I thought, Malachi Moore, who, you guys, our lads, has listed as the starter. He's looked really good so far in camp. I'm buying Malachi Moore stock. I think he has a really good chance to start the year, but has so much experience at Alabama, starting for multiple years and playing at a pretty high level too. I think that was the day 3 pick I was most excited about from this past draft. So that's like a position battle that I like to watch for, and just, other battles, not really positional, but I've been loving watching Armand Membu and Will McDonald go out.
Oh yeah.
Those are 2 young guys on this team. Membu, the first round pick, a rookie. Will McDonald coming off a big year last year. And, I think Armand's held his own. Will McDonald, beat him a couple times at the practice I went to, one on a spin move, one on a bull rush. Kind of nice to see the added weight for Will McDonald and a little bit more power to his game, being a more well-rounded edge rusher now. But that's something, it's hard not to watch that. They're both, number running with the 1. So you see it a lot. And, every snap I notice myself keying in on that matchup.
Yeah. Again, it was interesting that now I'm not sure what if coach was, because I know he wasn't, I don't think he was digging the former regime, but do you remember when they were talking about that and the reporter asked him somewhere along the lines of, well, why all of a sudden is McDonald being able to use power, basically? And Glenn went out and just went coaching. And it's like, okay. So I was wondering, does he mean he wasn't getting the proper coaching, or is he just saying, my guys are coaching these guys up because my guys are really good? I don't know what he was going after, but maybe a little bit of both, I guess.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of both, but I do like that change from Glenn, right? Like something that Will McDonald needed to do. Had a nice year last year, went over 10 sacks, but could use some extra weight, could be better in the run game, is really just a one-trick pony with the speed rush. But what would take his game to another level if he does add that physicality? And that's
Oh
something
yeah.
that Glenn has talked about a lot, not just on the defensive line, just overall. It feels like the identity of this team, they're going to be a team that plays hard and is really physical. So that kind of, fits the narrative there.
Okay, so as far as other interesting position battles, I guess, what about wide receiver? Because it's starting to look like we might see Wilson, Reynolds, and Tyler Johnson on the field a lot more as far as the top three wideouts.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not really a competition for who's wide receiver two. I know for a lot of the offseason, it was maybe a little bit of a debate. It's Josh Reynolds. He is
Yeah.
by far the one that's been the second most targeted. Garrett Wilson gets a ton of targets as we expect. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Johnson's had a good start to camp. Arian Smith, the rookie that they've taken, has shown a lot in training camp too. The speed is very obvious. But you bring up Tyler Johnson. That's an interesting one. I think he's, performed at a level where I think he's really pushing Alan Lazard. The practice I went to and just camp in general kind of feels like Lazard's been a little quiet to start training camp, which, that's not always a bad thing. If you're getting reports on, drop passes every day, that's on the negative side, which you don't like to see. But I'm really interested to see who they decide to keep, because I think wide receivers 3 through like 7 or 8, it's all pretty tight there, and you can make an argument for any of those 5 guys to make the team over another.
Yeah, because speaking of getting negative news, Corley, I don't know. Again, these guys didn't draft him, and I don't think they're going to care about the fact that he was a 3rd-round draft pick last year. So I don't know. I think Corley and Gibson have got some work cut out for them, because Pritchett is someone that I'm hearing good things about. I know he was a dynamic player at a lower level, but still dynamic player, FBS player. And then, I'm hearing stuff about Brandon Smith too, but yeah, I mean, I think that's something to keep an eye on, because we know that Wilson, Reynolds, Johnson, and Smith, and then I guess Irvin Charles, because he's going to play specials. So that's 5. And then I guess Gibson and Pritchett are probably going up against each other as well. So I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot of room left. So Early and Lazard better pick up their game. And I'm assuming Lazard, of course, if he's not going to be here, will probably get traded for a 7th-round pick or something like that.
Yeah, him going to Pittsburgh for a 7th-round pick or a late-round pick swap seems about right if he's not going to stay. You mentioned Pritchett. I think what excites me about him is the special teams ability. When you're a 5th, 6th, 7th wide receiver, you have to have another role on the team, right? You have to be able to give something on specials. And as a returner, I think he could do that. They have other guys like Irv Charles, who you mentioned also has a role on special teams. Corley right now really doesn't have a special teams role. And I think he's pretty low on the depth chart. I would put him behind guys like just based off of usage in practice, like Xavier Gibson and Brandon Smith and Arian Smith.
Yeah.
So he has work cut out for him. I personally don't love the idea of, just throwing away a 3rd-round pick essentially a year later. But as you mentioned, this regime didn't draft him, and it's really up to him to go out and prove it, I think, in the preseason. But his spot is certainly not guaranteed.
Okay. And the good thing is, along the offensive line, and this is something that we haven't been able to say for many years, that we're excited about the starting 5. And now there's a Tippmann-Myers matchup. That's maybe a good training camp battle right there. I still got to believe Tippmann. Well, look, I think Tippmann better win the job. Let's just put it that way. I mean, if Myers wins the job, that's I think more of an indictment on Tippmann than Myers is some really good player. Unless, of course, he just, the light went on from Myers after he left Green Bay. That's all possible. But this is a real exciting time for Jet fans and their offensive line.
It is. I like the offensive line a lot from left to right. And for me, I know they're putting out this, I'm going to call it a facade, but the center competition in air quotes, to me, it shouldn't really be close. Josh Myers, I know he started for Green Bay the last few years, but has not been anywhere close to the player that Joe Tippmann's been. I think Joe Tippmann took a step up to being a top half of the league starter, maybe close to top 10 starter at the center position last year. And I don't know if it's maybe the regime just wants to push him a little bit
Sure,
and
why
add a
not?
little fire under him. But I think he's clearly the most talented center that they have. But I liked what we saw from Olu last year when he came in the second half. I think both guards are good, and assuming Elijah Vera Tucker stays healthy, that would be important. And Membu, the rookie, it's not easy to come in and play tackle in this league in year one. But what I like about him is just his athleticism and how he moves in the run game. And with this team projecting to be such a run heavy offense, I think he's going to have a nice rookie campaign.
And what I like too is that because we've seen our share of injuries along the offensive line, that you bring in a Myers and he's got the experience. That's nice to see. But I'm also interested. Look, this Okafor dude who quit on his team last year, not a good look. But if he is got his head on straight and all that, that's a solid swing tackle. So that's okay. And, you do have Max Mitchell who's been here for a little bit. There's nothing wrong with him as a backup. So I'm a little bit more confident that if they need to bring in someone spot duty, that they're okay. But again, if you're going to have a really good season and you're going to do something that maybe nobody expects you to do, and I'm not talking about anything exotic here this year, but just, maybe have a 500 type season, then you got to keep that offensive line healthy.
100%. And offensive line's got to stay healthy, but they have better depth, I think, this year rather than what they've had in years gone by. You mentioned Okorafor. He's at least started in this league for Pittsburgh for a few years. I think you feel a little bit better if he has to come in rather than a Max Mitchell or Carter Warren playing a couple games at tackle. We've seen that the last few years. It hasn't looked great.
Have you heard anything, by the way, about Warren or Mitchell from the coaching staff, from anybody?
It's been very quiet for both of those guys. I haven't really heard on either the positive or negative front. So I don't know if you want to say that's a good thing that, maybe it's a quiet for offensive line, but haven't really heard much at all about those guys.
Okay. And it looks like Mason Taylor is the way he's looking, the way everything we're hearing is that week one, first play of the season, he's going to be out on the field.
100%. I am really bullish on Mason Taylor this year, just because you look at the rest of that room and there's a lot of question marks. I think Ruckert hasn't really developed the way that they were hoping. Stone Smart looked good in a small sample size for the Chargers, but in this offense, Justin Fields likes throwing to tight ends. He did it with Cole Kmet. He did it with Pat Freiermuth last year. I think Taylor's probably going to be third or fourth on the team in targets, I would guess, in the passing attack. And he's a young kid. He hasn't even turned 21 years old yet, but has had a strong start to training camp. Had a nice diving touchdown the other day. It seems like he's really gaining a connection right now with Justin Fields, which is, I think, really important, not only for Mason himself, but for Fields, right? Like the tight end is such an underrated safety blanket for quarterbacks who are trying to get their feet under him. And I know, for Fields, he's going into his fifth year in the league, but hasn't really established himself yet. If he is to take that step, I think Mason Taylor will be a big part of it.
Yeah, it's a very young room. So we'll find out whether or not they're pleased with all these, young players and their progress during camp. And same thing with the running backs, mostly young. But that's a good thing. You want your running backs to be young, and this is a big year for Breece Hall because it looks like Braylon Allen, he's going to be here for a while. But Breece has got a couple of years on him, and we know this is it. I mean, this is an audition for Hall, and he knows. A couple of things could happen. Is that if he winds up having some fantastic year, he's probably going to price himself out of here. So in a way, for Jet fans, you'd probably prefer to have like this committee room, everybody doing well, specifically Allen and Hall, and then don't put Hall's numbers out there too much, and then you could maybe have a better chance of signing him and bringing him back.
Yeah, really interested to see what happens there with Brees Hall. I would think, especially because of the position, if he has a good season, I think the franchise tag would be in play to bring
Interesting.
him back for next year. We see that a lot with running
You're
backs, and
right. Good call.
a big reason is because it's not, like quarterback or edge or wide receiver where the number's just astronomical. It's usually a pretty fair number for the running backs, but I think we're going to see a split, and we can't forget about Isaiah Davis. I thought he looked pretty good in the second half of last year. And I think, all three of those guys are going to be utilized in this offense. Ideally, in a perfect world, they're probably hoping Brees Hall is their version of Jahmyr Gibbs and Braylon Allen is their version of David Montgomery,
Yeah.
running a similar style to what we saw in Detroit the last few years.
What would be funny is if they started like week one, they come out on the field and Braylon Allen's out, because that would be exactly what the Lions do. They always start their first series with Montgomery, and usually it's successful. They march down the field, and they hand off the ball to Montgomery, scores a touchdown, and then Gibbs is gets most of the touches the rest of the game. But for the most part, Montgomery obviously gets a lot of his production as well in there. But yeah, I think that could be real interesting to keep an eye on if they actually run a similar type of concept. Defensively, you mentioned McDonald, and with Jermaine Johnson coming back. So he is really right now the only big question mark with injuries. But so far, so good, right? We're hearing all positive things that they're just being extra precautious.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to be a little precautious with that, which is fine. I don't mind that approach. It's still very early in camp. You don't really have to worry until late August to get him back in the mix, I would say, which is fine. I'd rather them go cautious, even if the player feels like, hey, I'm good to go now. I was cleared. I can practice. Sometimes as a coach, you have to save those guys, right? Like you don't want to run them out there and God forbid make the injury any worse. So from that side, I don't blame the Jets for how they're handling that at all.
Yeah, and if Jermaine Johnson can have a healthy season along with McDonald, that is going to be really, really important for this defense because they do not have enough depth right now at that position. So Clemens, I'm assuming, is going to make the team. Barron, you would guess, would make the team. So everybody else just wide open, correct? Would I be correct to assume that regarding who's going to be left over regarding the edge position?
Yeah, I think so. It's really tough right now without Jermaine Johnson. Clemens is running with the ones, so like you got to imagine that he's sticking. Tyler Barron as a draft pick, I think would make the roster, but there's a lot of questions I think with their depth, and you could argue this is maybe one of their weaker spots depth wise after the two starters. I obviously like Jermaine and Will McDonald a ton, but beyond that, I think it's there's definitely some question marks there. And I don't know if it's written in stone just yet who those depth pieces are going to be for this team.
A defensive tackle. The team made a couple of under the radar signings to pair up with Quinnen Williams. It's yet to be known whether that's going to work out or not. You hope it does. But I would just guess that those two guys will stay, and maybe the top three guys will stay, the top three free agents along with Williams. So then the competition comes from those other four guys we see there on the depth chart. And I got to believe it really comes down to Leonard Taylor and Peyton Page, who I've heard some good things about so far.
Yeah, I think Peyton Page has had a really strong camp, and I like Leonard Taylor, a UDFA that they found last year. I think he gives you some pass rush juice. I would absolutely think that he makes this team. One of the bigger surprises for me in a positive way, I think, has been Byron Cowart, who I don't even think it's a question anymore. I think he absolutely is going to be the starter next to Quinnen Williams. Unless, Derek Nottie has a great summer, but he has been pretty quiet through the first week or so. So it's going to be a little bit of a rotation, or that's at least the thought, right? Next to Quinnen, that there's no obvious starter, but Cowart, I think, is really pulled away from the pack here. So would expect him to be starting next to Quinnen.
And at linebacker, the Jets have two really good young players, Quincy Williams and Jamin Sherwood. That's going to be really nice to see. And again, they're going to blitz a lot more and play more man, and I'm excited about that. That means more opportunities for some splash plays. And we even talked about this, and I've just keep mentioning this as often as I can, that I just wanted to see Quincy Williams be more of an attack dog instead of a cover linebacker. And now I think we're going to get our wish.
I think so too, especially with the scheme that Steve Wilks and Aaron Glenn play. I think he's going to blitz a lot. And we saw in very small samples, right? Because Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich, they were not really blitz heavy guys on the defense. That wasn't their scheme. But in the few times that he did it, he's so fast that he would get to the backfield very quickly. I think that's great for him. And then you have Jamie Sherwood, converted safety, who is also very fast and could go sideline to sideline well. So I'm with you. I think we're going to really get to see Quincy Williams as a weapon used as a blitzer this year.
And I don't think they're going to keep more than 2, maybe 3 additional inside line or additional linebackers. So I've heard good things about McCurry Ball so far. Again, they've got a draft pick that they're probably going to keep. So who do you think it's going to come down to?
Yeah, Jamin Davis is another one who I think they like, kind of the similar to Quincy, that he could be used as a blitzer. Just has again a ton of speed. Zaire Barnes, I think maybe has a shot. He had a really good camp last summer, but has been quiet so far this year. So it might be a tough battle for him, but you'd have to imagine that, the rookie Kiko Mauangoa is going to stick. And I would think between the rest, maybe Barnes and Davis are the other 2 linebackers that would stick behind the 2 starters.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about Davis coming over too. So he might be one of those quiet deals to keep an eye on from late last year. The defensive back room, again, you mentioned Moore. So there's that competition there. But what about the rest of the back end of the secondary? Who's fighting for those last couple of jobs? Because just looking at that group, the only guy that I've heard some really interesting things in a positive way have been actually Jarius Monroe.
Yeah, he's someone who I think has a chance of those back end guys, right? Like if you're talking depth, maybe sneaks onto the roster. He would be one of those guys. I also think if you're looking at corner, probably a battle between one of Quantez Stiggers or Jarek Bernard Converse. At least with Bernard Converse, he has the ability to bump to safety if need be. So if you wanted to keep him and maybe you don't want to keep Monroe, you could do it that way. But those are 2 guys that I think the Jets were very high on last year, and just kind of how the roster is shaken out. You sign Brandon Stevens, you draft AZ Thomas high. There's a lot of spots taken up very quickly. And, like Isaiah Oliver, I know he's listed here. Oh, no, he's not. Excuse me. He's listed as a nickel back. I was going to say, I think he's going to be the backup nickel to Michael Carter. And that's another guy who has safety experience too. So I think they'd want to stick with the guys who have the flexibility.
And the special team signing. So Nick Folk comes in, former Jet. I was starting to get used to the idea of getting both young kickers in McNamara and whoever was going to win that place kicker job. Mevis is going to have to earn it now, but I just hope that if Folk looks the part and he's just kicking like he has the last couple of years, and I have no problem with them going that way, because they don't want to lose games because of the kicking situation. Not year one with this young team. I just hope they can find a way to hold on to this, because it would be nice if he looks good that they can hold on to him for 2026.
Yeah, it really would. I think he has an uphill battle to beat Nick Folk out this year, right? But at Nick Folk's age, like, he's going to be 41 this year. So this isn't a long-term answer where Mevis could be potentially. But you look at the numbers that Nick Folk had the last 2 years, he's still good. He hit at 96% each of the last 2 years, which led the NFL. He's been pretty much automatic. You know what he is. So it's going to be interesting to see how they decide what to do. But you're right. Like, if Nick Folk wins this battle fair and square, which I think probably pretty likely just based on past history, it'd be nice to find a way to keep Mevis around, maybe on the practice squad.
All right. A couple quick things. Give me a breakout player on either side of the field, offense and defense. A young player who you think could emerge as a significant contributor in this season?
Yeah. So starting on offense, it's hard not to go to Braylon Allen. Just because I think his role is going to be increased. And that's another guy who was so young last year, drafted as a 20-year-old, the youngest player in the draft. Another year older, I think that's going to help him. When you see him on the practice field, he just looks so much bigger than everyone else. Like he's one of those guys where you'd have him come off the bus first for a high school game, right? Like that's just how he's built.
And then Michael Clemens.
And then Michael Clemens, number 2, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So with the role that I think they're looking for in this offense, I think they're going to use multiple backs. So while Breece Hall's, listed as the number 1, I think Allen's going to get his carries and have bigger numbers than what he did a year ago. And defensively, a little bit of a cop out, but I'm going to take a rookie and someone that I talked about already, Malachi Moore. Day 3 pick, you don't always expect them to come in right away and start. I think he does. I would expect him to be the starter out of the gate. And with all the experience that he has as a starter at Alabama, playing at a big time program at a big division like the SEC or big conference like the SEC, I think it's going to be an easier transition for him. And I think he settles into being a solid starter for the Jets this year.
Okay. And then give us a player, give us like a long shot player to make the team, someone that is not expected. Nobody expected him that he'd have a shot to make the team, but he's going to do it.
I'll go Andrew Beck, the fullback. Just again, another one, right? Like not a sexy position, but if the Jets are really dead set on being a team where we're going to run the ball, we're going to be a powerhouse team, play good defense, eat the clock, then they might want to have a fullback on this roster. And if that's the case, then I'll say Andrew Beck makes this team.
I like it. Andrew Beck. This is team 6. Okay. Interesting. And does he have any ties at all to, let's see, he was on Denver. So GM knows him.
GM knows him.
Okay. Interesting. Got it. Andrew Beck. Okay. Now let's close out with talks about week 1. The Jets are going to be taking on Pittsburgh. And I know it's a long way off, but we all hope, at least for our side, that it's, we're all ready to go. Everybody's healthy. It's Justin Fields. It's Aaron Rodgers. Let's have some fun. The Steelers are a 3-point favorite at the Jets. So I know it's quite a ways away, but what are you expecting in this matchup? What do you think about Garen Glenn's first game as a coach, home game, all the enthusiasm, everything, just the place is going to go bananas. I didn't think they needed Aaron Rodgers there, to tell you the truth, but he's there. It's like icing on the cake that Aaron Rodgers is there.
Yeah, it's just that little extra element to this one. I think there's going to be a low scoring, grinded out kind of game, like a 17-16 old school football. 2 really good defenses going back and forth. I don't think we see a lot of offense in this one. I think it's a field goal game either way. So I guess I would take the Jets with the points. I think they have a good chance to win. I don't think it's a lock that they're winning or an obvious, guarantee that the Jets are going to win in week 1, but I like their chances. If you're going to get a team like the Steelers, I'd rather get, Aaron Rodgers and them early when he still hasn't, maybe got some of the connections down with the wide receivers yet.
True.
At his stride to the second half of the year. So I think it'll be a tight game and one that the Jets absolutely have a chance in.
Okay. And as far as the schedule, and by the way, they open up preseason at Lambeau. As far as the schedule, the regular season schedule, what do you think? What's the, because, it's not an easy schedule. So big surprise. The Jets have to be dealt with some sort of difficult schedule. The Patriots have it at an easy street, and we got a tough schedule. Go think. But anyway, this is part of it. Pittsburgh week 1 and having to take on the Buffalo Bills week 2, and then Tampa Bay week 3. So what do you think about the schedule in general? Because it does get a little bit easier in the second half.
Yeah, it does lighten up a little bit in the second half, but you're right. The first 3 games of the year could be very tough for the Jets. I think, for me, I know their win totals at 5.5. I think they come in above that. I think they're better record wise from where they were a year ago. I'm between 7 or 8 wins for this team, 7-10, 8-9, which obviously it wouldn't be enough to get them over the hump and into a playoff spot. But I do think that they will be a much more competitive team than they were a year ago. And honestly, as sad as this is going to sound, I think Jet fans would be pretty excited about an 8-win year. They haven't crossed that win total since 2015, 10 years ago. But if Aaron Glenn in year one with this roster and some major questions at quarterback is able to get further than Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas ever got, I think that'd be a good sign for the organization.
All right, so here's the latest. They had 5.5. It's you'd have to give up minus 155, but I wouldn't do that. Why do that when you can just go to 6.5 and you're at plus 120? Because I'm with you. I don't think. Look, to me, the only way this team is not a 500 type team, 8-9, that type of thing, is if they have injuries again. Quarterback goes down, which we've seen over and over again with this franchise. So if they have another rash of injuries, yes, they're not capable of withstanding that. But if not, if they're going to be a relatively healthy team, I'd actually be shocked if they didn't win 7 games.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think a lot would have to go wrong for them to finish under that mark. And who knows? It's the NFL, and the Jets have had disappointing seasons, but I think the coaching staff is going to be the biggest difference. Even if you look at the roster and you think they're not as good on paper as what they were a year ago, I think the improvements of the coaching staff keep them hovering around 500. Again, maybe 7-8 wins. If things go well, maybe it gets to 9. But I think that's roughly the range for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I would even, if you want, just go for, if you want to go for over 7.5 at 200. I got no problem with that. I think it's worth it. And again, but I would wait. This is one of those, because I don't think these odds are going to change much. So I'm just going to wait until week 1 to make sure the team is relatively healthy, quarterback's healthy, all of that. And if that happens, then I'd go ahead and definitely go over 7.5. How surprised are you that when you take a look at the futures that they're being like really discounted? I mean, they are the third. There's only 2 teams, and we know they're not winning the Super Bowl, but the point is there's only 2 teams with worse Super Bowl odds than the Jets, the Cleveland Browns and the New Orleans Saints. I mean, that sounds absolutely ridiculous to me.
It does. And like you said, I don't think the Jets are a Super Bowl team, but I think they're closer to the 23rd best team in the NFL or 20th best team in the NFL than they are the worst team in the league. Like, I don't know. That seems like extremely long shot odds there for a Super Bowl. I would argue that they should be ahead of more teams like Tennessee. I think they should be in front of in the AFC. I think they should be in front of teams like Carolina in the NFC, and I'm sure there's others too that aren't jumping to my head. But
well, here's 2 that I think they should be ahead of:
New England and Miami. I definitely think they will be better than Miami this year. I don't like what's going on with them at all. I think Jets and New England are very close this year. I see them both around an 8-win team roughly,
and yet they're 5-1, and the Jets are 18.
Yeah, I guess just believers in Drake May and the head coach.
Yeah. And how about, here's one that I would take. Let's see, is it here? Oh, no, here it is. This is one I just noticed that I would take right here. Here it is. Bills first, Jets second, 5-1.
I don't mind that at all for, a little sprinkle at plus 500. That's not bad at all.
That's not bad at all. All you have to do is beat out the Patriots and the Dolphins. And again, I think the only thing that the Patriots have on the Jets is the schedule. That's it. Otherwise, you're right. They're very dead even, but the Patriots do have an easier schedule. So
they do have a little bit of a lighter schedule. They do have the benefit of having a coach that's a little bit more proven, but I have some questions on the rest of their roster and on the offensive line too, to be quite honest with you. I think the Jets have the second or pretty close to the best offensive line in the NFL. I might in the division. I might put Buffalo slightly ahead, but I think they are clearly better on the offensive line than both New England and Miami.
All right, Matt. So, what do you said going to the Giant practice? That's going to be, you said August 12th, I believe. What else are you going to be doing to cover the Jets? Because I believe you push out videos every day on your channel.
Yeah, so right now we're just having a lot of fun reacting to the biggest storylines of the day at training camp. So, include clips from press conferences and talk about, who had a good day, who maybe didn't have such a great day at camp based on reports. So, stay tuned to the channel for daily updates from training camp.
Sounds great, Matt. We have links in the description. You could already see them right now. They're already up there. You can follow Matt on the channel, on a social media account, and so forth. So, Matt, I look forward to getting the opportunity to talk to you during the season, which, again, barring major injuries, I think it's going to be a fun season to cover and watch. And I think we're heading in the right direction with this coaching staff.
I agree. I'm right there with you. Thanks again for having